From the 22 News Plus studio, this is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of InFocus. I am your host, Patrick Berry. If you're paying attention to this show, about a month or so ago, I had Professor Richard Little, he's a geologist, probably the preeminent geologist in our area, come on to talk about something called armored mud balls. They're from the Jurassic period in history, and you can find them pretty readily right here in the Pioneer Valley. But part of our conversation started to devolve into how did the Pioneer Valley, the Connecticut River Valley, actually form? So Professor Little has been kind enough to come back into the studio. There he is right there. Professor Little, thank you so very much. And today we're going to talk about exactly that. How did the Connecticut River Valley form? So it is a long conversation, but we're got to limit it to half an hour because, we could go back millions of years, which is where I want you to start. Let's go back in time to millions of years ago.
Absolutely. The Connecticut River Valley is one of the best places in the world to study geology because we have so much that is right in our view and under our feet right here in the valley. And it's so exciting to just learn a little bit about this, and then you can basically open the world as you walk around our valley, drive around our valley, and pretty much understand the geology underpinnings behind our landscape.
So what makes the Connecticut River Valley so good for geologists and for people to study?
Yeah, let's take a look at that. Let's go back to a time before the age of dinosaurs and before we actually had our whole continent here. There's a supercontinent called Pangaea that started to form about, maybe 600 million years ago and ended up about 250 million years ago. Now, that's before the Jurassic, before the age of dinosaurs.
Okay.
But what was happening during those several hundred million years is that plates of the Earth were colliding together, and they eventually made a huge supercontinent, and that's the one that we call Pangaea today. Of course, Pangaea has since split into the fragments that we now see.
That are the current 7 continents.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But at the time, they came together and they made the supercontinent. And a lot of people would think that supercontinents would last forever. But there's one big problem with that, because when you put all the continental pieces together, the heat that's coming out of the Earth cannot get out very easily. And it causes the middle part of that big pile to swell, expand, and then the plates split and slide off, just like sliding off your bed in the morning.
Right.
They're sliding off away from
Each
the
other,
expanded
right?
area.
Okay.
Yes, and that's what creates the Atlantic Ocean today and puts our plates in motion in the directions that we see them today.
So we're not far from the Atlantic coastline here in western Massachusetts.
That's right.
So at some point in time, Europe, Africa, whichever those, the continents to the east of us, Far East, were up against the current east coast of the United States?
No, that's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And then this, as you described, this heat from the core of the Earth came up and pushed those other continents away.
Yep.
And kind of formed what we see today.
Yeah, it's basically gravity comes up and the plates slide away.
So that took several hundred million years for that to happen. Are the continents currently still moving? And will they, like 100 million years from now, will they be in a different spot?
Oh, yeah. They're in a different spot. And with satellites, we can actually measure this on a yearly basis.
Really?
That some plates, the ones that are in the ocean that are the thinner, the ocean tectonic plates, can move about a foot per year.
Wow.
That's the fastest. The continental plates have a little bit more mass and more resistance to moving. So they move maybe half an inch a year. But nevertheless, it's absolutely astounding how we know about the Earth these days and can actually track motions across the surface of the Earth.
Okay, so Pangaea separates, and boom, we've got New England, right?
Oh, okay. Now this is the best. This is the best story for us, I think, because when Pangaea splits, it splits with a whole bunch of cracks. Of course, the biggest crack is where the Atlantic Ocean comes in, but there's loads of cracks going up and down that boundary that's splitting. And we are right along one of those cracks.
Oh, interesting.
Those cracks are called a rift valley as the world is splitting apart. it breaks. You get these down-dropped valleys called rift valleys. And a great place to see this today, by the way, is Death Valley. Go to Death Valley. It's like going right into the Jurassic of Western Massachusetts here.
So Western Massachusetts, as we sit here today, is a rift valley very similar to Death Valley, California?
It started out that way.
Okay.
Now, the fault that is key to these rift valleys, that was operating because of Pangea splitting.
Okay.
So when Pangea split, we got this down-dropped valley here called that Rift Valley. And it was into that Rift Valley that all of our reddish sedimentary rocks came in, our sandstones and shales and so forth, the dinosaur footprints, the armored mud balls rolled in. Oh, let's give a shot. We have an armored mud ball.
There you go.
Here.
Right. We covered those a month ago.
We have to appreciate these guys. They're so rare in the world.
Right.
Hopefully to be a Massachusetts sedimentary structure.
Good. Good.
The armored mud balls, the dinosaur footprints, and then came lava. So we have a 400-foot thick lava flow that came in here. That's today the Holyoke Range, and we'll talk more about that.
So the Holyoke mountain range is lava?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're up on our first commercial break, but that's a good tease for when we come back, because you've thrown me for a loop by mentioning lava here in Western Mass.
There's hot stuff to come, let me tell you.
I like the way you did that. We'll be right back.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of In Focus. I'm your host, Patrick Berry. Sitting across the desk from me today is Professor Richard Little, a geologist from Greenfield Community College, one of the preeminent geologists in our area. And just before we went to break, he threw me for a loop and teased us a little bit by saying the Holyoke mountain range is lava. Okay, so Professor Little, as we sit here, I think of 0 volcanoes in the Northeast. Mount Washington a volcano? No.
Oh, no.
No. So how do we get lava here?
Well, let's go back to Pangea splitting. As soon as you start to split that supercontinent, there's all sorts of cracks that open up.
Right.
And of course, the pressure on the lower part of the Earth has also decreased because we're taking the continent and we're pulling it apart.
Okay.
And if you reduce the pressure on hot rock, it will melt. So you can keep it solid by keeping the pressure on.
Okay.
But as soon as you pull it apart, it can turn to liquid much more easily.
So as the continents were together, that pressure kept the lava towards the center of the Earth. As they separated, the lava came up. Okay.
Right. So the lava comes up, and it comes up much like we see in Iceland and also in Hawaii. It comes up extremely hot.
Right.
And it flows out like a flood. In fact, these are called, the rock is basalt, and they're called fissure flows or flood basalts.
Okay.
Because they just flood across the landscape. And that was our environment here back in the Jurassic time. So the dinosaurs were walking around, but they had to get out of the way of lavas coming around.
Interesting.
As well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a picture. This is a lava flow, but those are humans. Those are not dinosaurs. So what are we looking at? Okay,
this is a picture from Iceland, and Iceland is carpeted by these fissure flows.
Okay.
And that's part of the big attraction of going to Iceland, is seeing lava phenomena up close. And so I led several tours to Iceland. So it was really fun, like in this picture, to walk across a landscape that is a fissure flow, several hundred years old here in this case. But that's
so what you're
landscape.
saying is what this picture depicts right here in Iceland is what the Connecticut River Valley looked like at one point in time millions of years ago.
Exactly. This is a Jurassic picture. Could be a Jurassic picture.
Interesting.
From the Connecticut River Valley.
Okay. No trees, no nothing.
Well, when you're on a recent lava flow, that's right. It just blankets everything.
Okay. Okay. So I want to pull up this next picture, which is let's go. There we go. Now this is a picture of what looks like a volcano. How are these two pictures related?
Oh boy, and I'm so glad you asked that, because lava is volcanic,
right?
But it doesn't have to come out of a volcano. And a lot of people get that confused, and I admit it is confusing. but we did not have lava coming out of a volcano here in the Connecticut River
It
Valley
just seeped
200
up
million years ago.
through cracks.
Right. So they're called fissure flows, like I said. So they come out of cracks in the ground, fissures, and then they just flow. And it's so hot and fluid that they don't tend to build up tall volcanoes because they just flow
Okay.
laterally. They're so hot and fluid. And so if we did have big volcanoes here, we would see things like the picture shows. We would see the structure of the volcano. We would see the volcanic neck and these radiating dikes that would go out from the volcano. We see none of that in our New England landscape. We just see the lava flow like a book, kind of up on edge.
Right.
So
So the lack of seeing anything of that indicates fissure flow.
that's right. So
Okay.
it's volcanic. It's a lava flow, a fissure flow, a flood basalt, but it did not build big volcanoes.
So how do we know that? I mean, have you found or have people found volcanic rock in this area?
Well, once again, the lava is volcanic rock,
Okay.
but we just don't see evidence of a tall structure that would be over a central vent. See,
Okay.
it's not a cent. To get a volcano, you need a central vent,
Right.
and then the lava radiates out and builds the structure. But in this case, it just came out of the fissures. So,
Okay.
um,
So what proof do we have? I mean, do you have rocks that show this volcanic material here in the area?
yeah, let's talk about that. There's
Okay.
two things I would like people to know about this, and that is when lava flows out on land, it's going to cool and crack and shrink as it cools and crack into these 5 or 6-sided patterns called columns, basalt columns. And I think almost everybody has seen, the edge of Mount Holyoke and Mount Tom that have
Right.
these linear columns that kind of run up and down. That's all due to just shrinkage cracks
Okay.
in the lava.
So this picture is looking south from basically above Northampton Airport, where like this is the range right here, right?
Right.
Okay.
That's the range. And a close-up view of that would show these columns, and that indicates that lava flowed on land. But nearby, there were lakes here in the Connecticut River Valley back at that time in the Jurassic. So once again, the lakes are places where the armored mud balls would be rolling
Right.
down
Right.
towards them, and dinosaurs would be walking along the shorelines and so forth. But the lava also would flow into those lakes. And so these were not really deep lakes, not like an ocean or anything like that. They were shallow lakes, and they were kind of interspersed around the bottom of the valley here at that time. So, for instance, if you're on Skinner Mountain there, Mount Holyoke, you would find that the columns indicate flow on land.
Okay.
But if you go across the river to Goat Peak, there that overlooks East Hampton and Holyoke, if you look at the bottom of that lava flow, the bottom of that lava flow has something called pillows, and pillows form in water when lava flows into lakes.
Okay.
And I would like to do a hand demonstration to show you
Absolutely. Okay.
how pillows form. So here we go. My hand represents the lava underwater. When it goes underwater, the lava chills the surface of the flow here. But inside, it's still molten.
Okay.
And so the pressure of that molten lava pushes against the chilled crust and it breaks through and it forms a tube.
Like a pipe tube. Okay.
It's like a pipe. It's like a tube. And then there'll be another one and another one and another one and another one. So there'll be all these overlapping.
Looks like fingers, or wires overlapping each other.
Exactly right. And geologists call them pillows because when you see them in the rocky outcrop, they look like a bunch of pillows, one over the other.
Okay.
So pillows look like this. I have happened to find one that broke. You can see the circular part of the pillow here
Right.
on the outside. And this is a broken slice, so it's like a cross section. But this was part of one of those tubes that indicates the lava
Interesting.
flowed underwater. So at various times, when you see this hiking on Mount Tom or other places, and you start to see not the columns with all those cracks, but these roundish shapes, then that means that the lava flowed into water at that point.
And you can find these throughout our area, these types of rocks.
It's rarer because
Okay.
the lava flowed on land most of the time.
Oh, okay.
But certain times there were the lakes, but the lakes weren't all that deep either. So, for example, in many places like up in Greenfield, there's some excellent examples of this where you find maybe 30 feet of pillows, and then on top of that, columns. So the
Ah,
lava filled in the lake and then it cooled like it would on land
right.
and made the columns. So it's really,
Fascinating.
really cool to see ancient geography, preserved
Right
in a
here.
lava flow.
Absolutely. We are up on our second commercial break. Stay with us. We've got plenty more to talk about.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this edition of In Focus. I'm your host, Patrick Berry. We are here in the 22 News Plus studios today talking about how the Connecticut River Valley, basically from the Long Island Sound to northern Vermont, ended up forming. Joining me across the desk today is Professor Emeritus from Greenfield Community College, Richard Little. Professor Little, thank you again so very much for joining me. I appreciate your time. So you blew my mind with lava flows here in the Northeast, but explained it how it came about in lieu of any volcanoes. But how did moving beyond that? When you were here last time, we talked a little bit about Lake Hitchcock being here.
Mm-hmm.
But how did all that lava flow? How did Lake Hitchcock? How does the Connecticut River? How does that all come to create the landscape that we see today?
Oh boy, that's a great question. And first of all, in our last segment, we talked about pillow lavas and
Right.
the lava flowing into lakes. Please note that this was not Lake Hitchcock. The lakes that the pillow lavas flowed into, these were 200 million year old lakes back in the Jurassic.
Oh, way back.
Yeah, way back.
Because Lake Hitchcock is less than 20,000 years old,
That's
right? Okay. So how did Lake Hitchcock form?
Okay, so skipping much more towards the present day now. The last glacier was at its maximum about 20,000 years ago, and that would put it down at Long Island Sound,
Okay.
making Long Island as the terminal moraine there. And then it starts to melt back. And by about 18,000 years ago, it's in central Connecticut. And in central Connecticut, there's a pile of glacial debris that blocks the old Connecticut River channel.
Okay.
So as the ice continues to melt at that point, the water just can't flow freely to the ocean. So there is a dam there in central Connecticut, right at Rocky Hill, actually just south of Hartford. And so that's the beginning of Lake Hitchcock. The lake starts to build and build and build as the ice melts. So the more the ice melts, the longer the lake becomes. And eventually,
Right.
as you see in the picture here, there's the Holyoke Range extending like a giant peninsula
Right
into
there.
the lake. Yeah, a peninsula right into Lake Hitchcock.
Okay. And then, so what I want to point out is that this picture is a historical image of basically this. So here's the gap that we see, right by the Oxbow Marina between Northampton, East Hampton, Holyoke, right there. And then this image, it's this spot right here, correct?
That's exactly right.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
Okay. So, and all this deep purple is what would have called then Lake Hitchcock. This area over here is Amherst.
Yep, it's Amherst and Island.
Down here is Chicopee, right? This little peninsula here. I don't know if you can.
Oh, Chicopee. Oh, yeah, there it is.
Down there,
yes,
right?
Chicopee is a delta built into Lake Hitchcock by the Chicopee River. So
Okay.
you see the flat top of that delta.
So now, how important were deltas to this area?
Deltas are very important because every river that today comes into the Connecticut back 18,000 to 14,000 years ago. Lake Hitchcock basically went 18 to 14,000 years ago. During that time frame, those rivers would have gone into the lake. So every tributary to the Connecticut would have built a delta into the lake. And today we see these up and down the valley. I mean, if you go to, in fact, airports love to be on those flat, well-drained landscapes there.
Westover,
So,
Bradley, Barnes.
that's it.
Okay.
So it's really interesting to see that impact on our life here where the airports are. But here's something that people don't quite realize. That is, we have a great industrial heritage here, and that relied on water power. Water powers rely on waterfalls.
Right.
And waterfalls are a rare part of a stream system because they're so erosive, they don't last long. So when you find a waterfall, something has disrupted the stream system. And in this case, what disrupted the Connecticut River was Lake Hitchcock, because Lake Hitchcock had a lot of deposits, this clay, mud that comes in
Right.
the lake bottom, and then the deltas build out across the lake shore as well. And when the lake finally drains and the Connecticut River comes back to its valley, it can't find its old channel. So it starts to cut through the Lake Hitchcock deposits. And then once in a while, it finds itself on top of a hard rock that it didn't know was there. And
Okay.
it falls over that. That creates a waterfall.
Oh.
So when you go to Turner's Falls and Bellows Falls and South Hadley Falls and so forth, you find that these are just disruptions, strange locations for the Connecticut River to flow, and it flowed over rock to make the waterfall. And then, of course, people came and said,
Right.
"Oh, you got a waterfall? You can make water power."
So I want to pull that picture up again of the range there by the Oxbow. So the range of mountains is historically lava that has settled and kind of and turned on its side. The west side is sloped. The east side is or the west side is steeper, and the east side is sloped. And then the Connecticut River flows through by cutting at its weakest point, right?
Yes, but it's also a bit of luck there. So let me solve a misconception here about how does the Connecticut River cut through the Holyoke Range? Because people think, well, it was dammed up and we had a big lake and so forth. But those are just wrong scenarios. The real geologic story here is something you might not guess. And let me take you to the top of Route 2 or up on the top of the Mohawk Trail,
Okay.
overlooking the Berkshire Hills and also the Central Mass uplands up there. If you climb any hilltop and look around, you will see that the landscape looks extremely flat. You can kind of fill in the valleys and see a flat top landscape.
So the peak from peak to peak to peak would have been flat.
Exactly. And this extends all across the eastern seaboard, by the way, even into Canada.
Oh.
It's a flat surface we call a peneplain. It's an erosion surface. And it was here at the end of the age of dinosaurs up until maybe 60 million years ago. So it's been there for millions of years, but about 20 million years ago, it starts to be uplifted. And one of the things about uplift is streams can now start to downcut. So here's what happens. We have the Holyoke Range, which is now tilted because Pangea was still spreading, right. So the lava flow came out flat, but then it tilted kind of like a book.
Right.
It became part of the peneplain surface, so the whole region is now flat. The Connecticut River is now on the flat surface, but when that surface uplifts, then the river can downcut.
Okay.
So you see, it is superimposed, as they say, on top of the landscape. So it started out on top of the flat plain, a landscape we don't see anymore except in these remnants. And then with the uplift, it cuts through the landscape and the river now finds itself cutting through the hard rock of the Holyoke Range.
And that's what we see today when we drive around.
That's right.
Fantastic. Professor Little, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. What a fascinating conversation to get a little bit more in depth on how the landscape is in our area. Wonderful chatting with you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.